right, and welcome to another episode of the Fantastic Mr. Podcast. I am Justin Strange here with my lovely co-host, Jake Kramers, however you want to pronounce it, and Zack Briggs. Hey, guys.
Hello again.
Yo.
So today our subject is going to be non-studio superhero movies, such as non-MCU and DCEU and all that stuff. But real quick, I have a couple things I want to talk about. And if you guys have something you want to talk about, we can take turns or whatever. But I just want to say that I watched the new show, Pam and Tommy, about Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee. And actually, it's not too bad. That's really all I have to say about it.
Give us a rundown. What's it about?
Pretty much tells the story of how the tape got out. And it's got Lily James in it. And that's the real reason, because, man, that girl, I don't know if you know who she is, but she was in the live adaptation of Cinderella. And then she's also in a movie called Yesterday. She's also in a movie called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Also a good movie.
Yeah. So she's in this. And so I mean, one thing, she's beautiful. And two, she's a great actress. Like, she's a really good actress. And then also Sebastian Stan is in this movie. If you know who Sebastian Stan is.
It's good to see him outside the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, he's the Winter Soldier.
I always thought Sebastian Stan would be a great actor to play like a Mark Hamill lookalike for Luke Skywalker.
You're not the only one.
Because
he would do it, but he has to get Mark Hamill's permission first.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think Mark Hamill would care.
I've been watching the Book of Boba Fett and then The Mandalorian, and they have scenes, spoiler, where they have a Luke Skywalker reprise, but it's obvious deep fake. It's improved a lot. In Book of Boba Fett, it looks amazing. It looks like The Return of the Jedi.
Spoiler,
Mark
man,
Hamill, Skywalker.
Haven't even seen it.
There's
Warning.
A reason for that is Disney actually hired a dedicated deepfake artist who's actually a YouTuber. He started as a YouTuber making deepfakes on YouTube specifically.
Yeah.
And
Shamook is his YouTube name. Yep.
He does such a good job that Disney hired him to be their dedicated
Lucky guy.
What
a lucky guy.
Yeah. It's important to keep up on your technology.
Yeah.
Well, Sega, I know this isn't a movie thing, but Sega, when they came out with Sonic Mania, which is essentially a new like a 16-bit Sonic, but with a little bit better graphics, and it's just a better looking game. But a guy had made like a fan version of a Sonic the Hedgehog, and they hired him. They're like, you make it. So he got to make the whole game. And I'm pretty sure he also helped with the Sonic the Hedgehog redo for the movie.
That's awesome. I love seeing small creators being hired by the companies that make the products that they love. That is a fan's dream.
If I were in that position to be able to hire somebody, I'd be like, hire this guy. Like, who cares about this guy? Hire this guy. We can see his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so here we go. So non-studio superhero movies. Let's start with you guys real quick. Do y'all have a favorite that you maybe have thought of?
The Chronicle's one of mine. It's a 2012 movie, kind of a coming-of-age sci-fi superhero-esque movie. These boys, kind of seems like he's the protagonist, a bullied individual. They find some stones, an object that gives them an assortment of powers, and it takes place in Seattle area, I believe. Just an excellent movie overall, and
well, it pretty much gives them
a lower budget movie, and it has this found footage technique at times. Overall, I think it was a good movie overall.
I went to theaters to see that movie. Because I remember when it was being advertised and my niece really wanted to watch it. And so I was like, let's go see it in theaters. So we did. And I was glad I did see it in theaters because it was a pretty cool movie. They end up getting like telekinetic powers, which was interesting because, we think telekinetic powers is like just being able to move stuff with your mind, which is what they did. But they ended up being able to fly because they were essentially moving themselves with their mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like lifting themselves up using telekinetic powers. And I'm like, how come nobody's ever thought of that?
Well, it's like the Force. Jedi could technically fly as well if they concentrate hard enough.
Yeah, I guess so.
That would break so many stories, though. That would just break the universe.
They'd be like, well, why can't you fly? The guys in Chronicle could do it. So what about you, Jake? Got any?
Wonder Woman.
The most recent one that I really enjoyed has been Invincible.
That's That's the animated one, right? The Boys was good too. You mentioned that earlier too.
It's an animated series on Amazon Prime. based off the comic of the same name by Robert Kirkman. Robert Kirkman, of course, is most well known for the Walking Dead series, but he does a lot of great other comic series, Invincible being one of them. And it's essentially kind of a coming of age story is how it begins, but like it's a teenager and his dad is their world Superman, essentially. His dad is Superman and he doesn't have powers. And it's kind of like starts in that area and then he gets powers and he has to like learn how to become a superhero with his dad. So it's got like some family drama in it. It's got like all sorts of stuff. And there's a great twist as the series goes along, which I'm not going to spoil, but it's very good. It's not a family friendly story, which I'm not going to say that is a rule for non-DC Marvel movies that we talk about.
But it seems to be the trend, right?
It seems to be the trend. If it's not a main studio, they have more leeway and they're allowed to do more fun stuff. Gratuitous violence being one of them.
Yeah, so you mentioned Invincible, which is on Amazon Prime, which I haven't seen yet, but I did watch The Boys, which was a good show. The first 2 seasons, I think, is on Amazon Prime. And then third season's coming out. You normally don't do this, but I still have yet to watch the season 2 finale. That's the only one I'm missing. The government essentially runs, right? It's the government, or is it like
it's a mega corporation?
Yeah, okay. I couldn't remember if it was government or a corporation that runs superheroes in like every state or city
like
has their own superhero.
City
has their own superhero, and it's pretty good. And it's very rated R type stuff.
Would you say that series is unlike anything that's been released before, kind of the antithesis to Justice League?
Yeah, it's very cynical. It's very cynical in its message about like our society and late stage capitalism and like what would happen if superheroes existed in the real world. What would happen? Well, corporations would probably sponsor them and then own them.
Yeah, essentially. So it's very and the one of the main characters, and I forget is it Captain Stars? No, that's Kick-Ass. What is the main superhero's name? Homelander. Thank you. The way they become superheroes is they're essentially experimented on as babies, and that's how a lot of them become superheroes, because parents got paid to kind of bring them in, and that's how some of them became superheroes and all this other stuff. So it's a pretty interesting show. Now that we've gotten through y'all's, so there are a couple movies I wanted to talk about. The first one being one of my favorite non-DC, non-MCU movies is Kick-Ass. I don't know if y'all have ever seen either one of those movies. Speaking of like almost gratuitous violence, right? Have you guys ever seen Kick-Ass?
Flips.
Yeah, 1 and 2. Oh my God, you guys.
I feel like we all have very distinct tastes in movies.
Why do I even talk to you? Oh my God.
I think Peacemaker is very similar to elements of Kick-Ass. I've heard.
Okay.
I've been watching, but that's DC, so.
That's also James Gunn, so if he can do violence, he does it. Because there's another movie I'm going to talk about by James Gunn, actually, but not right now. So Kick-Ass is about this kid who wants to be a superhero, and he's like wondering why nobody's ever done it before, and he decides he's going to be a superhero. So he buys like a wetsuit essentially and uses it as his costume. And in the comics, his mask is like it's almost it's like a wetsuit, where it's got the mouth is covered, but the eyes aren't, because that's where you put like your goggles or whatever. But in the movie, his eyes and his mouth are uncovered, which I thought was kind of weird, but I guess it's so we could, I don't know, so they don't have to go back and dub his voice. I don't know why they did that. But essentially he gets this costume and decides he wants to fight crime, and he tries and he loses badly. He gets like stabbed, and then he gets hit by a car. And so when he goes to the hospital, they had to replace like a bunch of his bones and stuff with like metal plates. So then he was not really invincible, but he could take a lot more pain. So then when he tried to do it again, like fight crime, he was able to take a bunch of hits because he couldn't really feel it. And then of course, there's people that help him. Their names are Big Daddy and Hit Girl, played by Nicolas Cage and Chloe Grace Moretz. Yeah, they are like actual crime fighters, and they can actually fight, and they actually know what they're doing, so they kind of help him. And then all this other stuff happens with the D'Amico family, and he's kind of like this, almost like this mob boss. And anyway, it's just very rated R, very good, very cool movie. And then Kick-Ass 2 came out.
I heard it's funny.
It is pretty funny. There's a lot of, and actually, Clark Duke, who is I forget his name in the movie, but he plays one of Dave's friends. Dave's the main character. He plays one of his friends, and that kid is actually from Arkansas. He's from Glenwood, Arkansas. If you've ever seen the movie Arkansas or The Office season 9, different things. So I thought that was neat that he was in that movie. And then you got Kick-Ass 2, which is the same characters except for Big Daddy, because spoiler alert, he dies in the first movie. But Jim Carrey joins this one, and they are pretty much creating like a superhero league, kind of like the Justice League. They're trying to, and so they use social media, and people are dressing up as superheroes, and they're kind of creating this movement. And then Jim Carrey's in it as Captain Stars and Stripes, and he's Russian, and got Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who's the main bad guy in it, and all this stuff. So it's kind of the same thing over again with the violence and all that. So that's one of the, and I think Kick-Ass is actually a Marvel comic. It's just not like, and of course not in the MCU. It's one of the Marvel's kind of backlog of type comics where nobody really knows it's Marvel, but I'm pretty sure it's Marvel, and I could look it up. But you know what? If anybody's listening and they want to say something about it, they can. That's totally fine. You can tell me all about it.
There's going to be a Kick-Ass 3, or is it conclude at 2?
Well, the issue with 2 was that people pirated it so much that they didn't make much money, so they didn't bring it back. But Chloe Grace, she said she would be down for a Kick-Ass 3, but it would have to be perfect. Kind of the same thing that Andrew Garfield said with an Amazing Spider-Man 3 or whatever, is kind of everything would have to be perfect, which means every character would have to come back, reprise their roles, which, you know, the guy that plays David Luszczyk, which is Aaron Taylor Johnson, who plays Quicksilver in Avengers Age of Ultron. He's like, I don't know, 30 something now. So I don't know how well he would do playing Kick-Ass again. But I mean, I think it'd be cool if they all came back, but I doubt it'll ever happen.
I have a question. So now that, you know, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man men are expose themselves in the MCU, is it fair to say that the pre-MCU movies are, I guess, technically a part of the MCU, but we just don't know yet? Like back then, all leads up to,
I guess,
No Way Home.
I mean, I guess, you know, I mean, they were pulled into it. I don't really know. I don't know how I feel about that. You know, I kind of like them being their own thing, but I guess technically they are, because I know that I had read something that Tobey Maguire said his Spider-Man is not the end of his Spider-Man. So, and I heard they were doing something with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming back as a first Spider-Man together. So I don't know. I guess it's part of the MCU now. I don't really care. You know, like I'm okay with Spider-Man No Way Home being Spider-Man No Way Home. Not necessarily worried about what's MCU and what's not at this point in time, you know, because like after Endgame happened, I'm like, all right, well, you know, I know they're going to keep coming out with all these MCU movies, but I'm okay if they don't, you know, let's kind of go back to doing their own thing before that whole thing happened. But they're going to keep doing it until it stops making money. And I think that it's going to be a while before that happens. So the next movie I want to talk about is actually a movie written and directed by James Gunn. It's called Super.
This one I know about.
Yeah, it's got Rainn Wilson, Dwight from The Office. And he plays this guy whose girlfriend left him for Kevin Bacon. I don't remember Kevin Bacon's name in the movie, so I'm going to call him Kevin Bacon. And Liv Tyler was his girlfriend. She leaves him, and then he decides to fight crime in order, I guess, to get her back so he can fight Kevin Bacon. And so that's pretty much the gist of it. But it's written and directed by James Gunn, which, if I remember correctly, at the time, he was dating Jenna Fisher. No, he wasn't dating her at the time. He had been married to her, though.
James Gunn, I haven't seen this movie, but I'm kind of familiar with this technique with music. Using a lot of music in his scenes and series in general. Does he kind of apply that in this movie as well, or?
You know, I don't remember the music as much. I just remember the reason why even Rainn Wilson is in this movie, because, you know, Rainn Wilson's kind of a goofy looking guy. You
just killed our chances of interviewing Rainn Wilson ever.
I'm sure he would agree with me.
He's never going to come on the podcast now.
I bet you he'll agree with me if I was like, hey, man, I caught you a goofy looking guy on our podcast. I believe Jenna Fisher and James Gunn were either dating or they were married for a little bit. But at the time, they weren't together anymore, but they were still friends. So James Gunn had sent her this script, and she was like, I know exactly who should play this character. He used to be Rainn Wilson. So that's how Rainn Wilson got the part. It also has Ellen Page, who we know now as Elliot Page. But at times she was Ellen Page, and she plays his little sidekick or whatever, you know. And so his superhero name in the movie is the Crimson Bolt, which if you look it up, you'll see him on the front on IMDb. He's got like a super homemade costume, and his weapon is like a big wrench, and he essentially hits people with it. And then his little slogan is "Shut up, crime."
I distinctly remember watching the trailers for that.
And he's like, he like hits people. He's like, molest children. It's so funny.
I remember the trailer for that, and my mom was appalled.
Yeah.
If he just like walked up to a dude and just caved a guy's head in with like a wrench.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
well, I remember in the movie, there was a part where I can't remember exactly what happened, but they were waiting in line for something. And I guess the guy had either cut in front of him or bullied him somehow. So he just walks away. And then you cut to him changing into his superhero costume in his car. And then he comes back to the line and he just hits the guy over the head with his wrench for doing whatever he did. And I don't remember him doing something that was very bad, like it wasn't anything insanely like, don't molest children. It wasn't anything like that. But I remember him walking up and just whacking them in the head with it. And so that was his little weapon for a while. And then he had created better weapons because he needed to defeat Kevin Bacon's character. And so he like started carrying guns, and then he had created like this projectile thing to stab Kevin Bacon in the leg or something like that. And all to get his girl back. And I'm like, dude, she left. Just leave it alone. But he ended up becoming a little crime fighter, and he looks weird in his costume.
It's a comedy too.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's like anything James Gunn has done before Guardians of the Galaxy, Like I was looking at this page, the page for Super on IMDb, and I went down and, you can see some other stuff that he had done, and he did a movie called Slither. Here's what it says on IMDb. A small town is taken over by an alien plague, turning residents into zombies and all forms of mutant monsters. So it's got Michael Rourke in it and Elizabeth Banks, and essentially this guy it's almost like The Fly with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, he's in The Fly.
Yeah, he's in The Fly. So it's kind of like that, where this guy turns in, or I don't know if you ever seen the movie Tusk, with Kevin Smith's movie Tusk with Justin Long, but he essentially turns into like this huge grotesque thing, and then there's all these like almost like leeches all around town, kind of like arachnophobia, just killing people. It's a really like kind of like the Human Centipede, where Human Centipede's worse. It's kind of like that, where it's like this horny kind of horror movie with something that like these little leech things that eat people, which I've never seen it, but I do have a friend that saw it. Jake, Austin, my buddy Austin. Yeah, he's seen it. I don't know, I'll probably watch it because it's like one of those movies that I think you would like, Jake, because it's the bad movies that are bad, they're so bad they're good kind of movies. Supers, if you guys have never seen it, it's a pretty good movie. You should probably check it out at least once, I would think, if you like these movies about superheroes that aren't MCU. And
speaking of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
I've never seen it, but that's got Sean Connery, right? Is that Sean Connery?
Yes, it has Sean Connery in it. And this is one of those bad movies. Everyone say it's bad, but I quite enjoyed it. It's a good movie.
And
it's about Sean Connery. He plays, I believe his name is Quartermain, and
it's Alan Quarterman.
Yeah. Creates this League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and I believe one lady as well, but she's still called a gentleman. And they have all these different powers, like the Invisible Man, Dr. Henry Jekyll, who's the guy with the painting that ages instead of him.
I don't know.
It's like all these mythical and sci-fi creatures all kind of like get together in one. And I think that should technically count as a superhero movie because
I think you're right.
Supernatural.
If they fight crime. Looks like it says it's an alternate Victorian age world.
Yeah, it's kind of like a steampunkish type.
I like steampunkish types.
Yeah, Wikipedia is calling it diesel punk superhero film.
Yeah, it's quite fun. It's a romp.
Steampunkish. I like that word. Another movie I watched when I was going to UCA as an undergrad, which is a random movie. It was on Netflix. It's called Alter Egos. Have you ever seen it?
I recognize the name.
Oh,
yeah. So how IMDb describes it is, at a time when superheroes have lost government funding and public support, a superhero meets a girl who can help him overcome his own emotional crisis. So it's about this guy, and he has these ice powers, and his name is the Fridge because all the other good names were taken. And it's got Danny Masterson in it, and he's not a superhero in it, but he is a superhero. I think if I remember correctly, he can go invisible for like a few seconds, and then he can't.
A few seconds?
Yeah, just for a few seconds, and then he's done. But yeah, forget Danny Masterson.
What an awful superpower.
I mean, seriously, what are you going to do with that? it was one of those movies I was like, let's watch this. And then I was like, that was just okay. You know, it's like, it was kind of forgettable. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't that good. And the CGI in it wasn't bad for like an indie movie. But whenever he froze people, instead of it being ice, they just like turned blue. Like, I guess
They just stood in place.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Danny Masterson, he froze him, and I think he just fell, and he just was like still, and then his body, his like skin was blue, and that was about it. So I mean, I guess if you're limited on funds, that's what you got to do, you know. And then his suit looks very cheap. Like his mask looks like it's made of foam.
Homemade costumes.
Yeah, pretty much. And so, and the girl in it's pretty cute. The girl he ends up liking. So let's see. Any other? We mentioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We were talking about that before we started recording. I would think that would be like a non-MC. I mean, it's definitely superheroes. So what? Crime. So what is your favorite movies? So we have the original 90s movies, 1, 2, 3, right? And then we have TMNT, which was an animated movie. And then you have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows by with the Michael Bay movies. So which one of those would you consider probably the better one?
Second one in the 90s.
Yeah, I would agree. When I was growing up, though, my mom had bought us randomly the third one, which if you guys have seen the third one, it's when they go to feudal Japan. They go back in time. Believe it or not, it's called Turtles in Time, which is the same name as the video game on the Super Nintendo. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But they go back, and I remember we watched that movie all the time, and I watched it as an adult, and I was like, man, this is not that bad as people make it out to be. So yeah, I remember that movie. Like I think they had switched the puppeteers from Jim Henson to a new company, so they looked different. They looked more like, to me, kind of look more like frogs, like giant frogs, because of the little spots they have on their head. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I think the third movie was at least not my favorite out of the three.
Well, yeah, sure. I would agree. It's definitely not my favorite, but I think it gets a lot of crap for being, really bad. And I'm just like, it's not that bad. I mean, yeah, it's weird because Elias, what is his name? Elias Koteas, is that his name? The guy who played Casey Jones in the first one?
Mm-hmm.
He comes back and he's clearly wearing a wig. Like, he's clearly wearing a wig, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember him in that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he walks in, he's just, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But then I think Corey Feldman comes back as Donatello. I think he's the only returning actor for those turtles. And I like Corey Feldman's voice for Donatello a lot.
Yeah, so I like the music of those.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Those movies, just the theme. I don't know if that... Yeah, was that a theme made for those movies?
I believe so. I could do that all day long. That's a good stuff.
There's such 90s movies. And
yeah.
I love the overall tone. The only thing that kind of bothered me was the changing of the April O'Neil actress. Was it a different actress each movie, or did they stay consistent after the second one?
I believe they stayed consistent after the second one. Let's look.
I like the first one.
Judith Hoag was in the first one, and I remember liking her a lot in the first one, but then they changed her. Let's see, Paige Turco, is that her name? Let's see, yes. That's the second one. Yeah, Paige Turco. Let's see if she's in the third one, and she is. She's in the third one. So, she's in Invincible with Mark Wahlberg. I didn't know that. I've seen that movie. That was a pretty good movie. You have seen Invincible with Mark Wahlberg?
No.
It's about the guy who ends up, he's like they have open tryouts for the Philadelphia Eagles, and this guy tries out and he ends up getting on the team. He's just like a random guy. Anyway, I was gonna
say, I don't remember Mark Wahlberg being in the Amazon Prime animated series.
Yeah. Well, it's not the same thing. Not even close. This movie came out in 2006. So yeah, he like trained and trains, and then he ends up making the team, but he ends up making special teams, which, if you guys know what special teams is like kickoff and field goals and stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there. The first one, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that's where they meet April. They meet April. I think my favorite part was when April was getting closer and closer to finding out about the Foot Clan. And so they tried to like kill her, and Raphael helped her and brought her home. He lays her out on the couch, and they ask why'd you bring him down here? He's like, oh, I don't know, Leo. I don't know. I thought I'd redecorate, a couple throw pillows, a TV news reporter. What do you think? And I thought that line was so funny, and I still think it's funny.
I like his accent.
Yeah, I do too. I like his whole, I don't know, Raphael's been the same except for the original cartoon, and I think they came out with that 90s live action show, The Next Mutation. It only lasted one season, but I don't think he's like that in that show.
I don't remember that.
It was a live action TV show with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where they had a girl turtle and they met the Power Rangers in that.
Oh, this is after the three originals.
I don't know.
1997.
Oh, then yeah, probably. Let's see.
There's a third one came out in 93. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, so it was a live action. It wasn't that good, but I watched like the first episode and they had met this I don't think she was from Earth, a girl turtle named Venus DeMilo, and she had like a light blue. No, she wasn't from space, but I don't remember where she came from because I just remember thinking.
Is she from the comics?
I don't know. I don't think so. Not the original comics anyway. I think they made her for the show, but I could be wrong. If you're listening and you hear this and you want to correct me, God, please correct me on this because I probably watched the first half of the first episode and I was like, all right, I'm done because it wasn't.
You saw they had a female turtle and turned that off.
I mean, and the show just wasn't that good.
You're telling me a Mutant Ninja?
Yeah, I'm telling you that
crossover. With Power Rangers.
Well, okay, let me rephrase. I did watch that episode because it wasn't just it was Power Rangers in space. And I remember when they weren't in space when this happened, but they came down because I think they had gotten possessed by the bad lady.
The bad lady. I think that was her name.
Yeah, in Power Rangers, so they got possessed by her and they had to fight them and then they ended up helping them. They all fought together and like when they met each other, the turtles were like, oh my God, they do exist. And then the Power Rangers like, oh my God, they do exist. So it's like, I think the Power Rangers, yeah, we have a whole episode of the Power Rangers coming up, but I think the Power Rangers now is kind of like this multiverse thing going on now.
Yeah, especially, Batman having a movie with them, the animated film. Do you see that?
Oh, you're talking about the Turtles? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that movie?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. It was neat.
It was good
because now Gotham and New York exist in the same world, and at least in that movie, because they didn't go through any portals or anything. They just went to Gotham City because they needed to for some reason. And so did the Shredder. And so the Shredder ends up working with who? The Joker, the Riddler. It was all of them. They end up turning them all into like animals. So the Harley Quinn was like a dog. The Joker was like a snake. And that was the whole thing. And Batman and Turtles helped out and blah, 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 fought together. It was a pretty neat movie. I wish I would love to see a live action version of that, to be honest with you.
That would be interesting how they would balance the tones.
I don't know.
Someone called James Gunn.
Yeah, he'd be all over it, man. If James Gunn tomorrow announced he was going to make a Batman and Turtles movie,
he could do it.
Now Batman movies,
yeah, they got the multiverse now.
Yeah, so they can just they can do whatever they want. I don't think they'll ever make a live action version of that, but it'd be cool if they did. And then we have later the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Michael Bay versions.
Isn't Megan Fox, April O'Neil in those?
I wanted nothing to do with those.
You guys need to open your minds and not dismiss things because
Michael Bay's name's attached.
I couldn't get past their teeth.
Oh yeah, I think there was a lot of criticisms about so the way they looked.
Yeah. Well,
I saw one trailer with one of them smiling, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I
do agree that because in the cartoon and even the comics, April's significantly taller than them. But in this movie, they're just like huge, and they're very much taller than April. You expect them to look one way, and then you let Michael Bay get a hold of them and he turns them into this whole other thing. But I liked it. I just liked the way, because here's the thing about Michael Bay movies. Most of them, there's some that I really thought were really good movies, like 13 Hours. That's a Michael Bay film, isn't it?
I'm familiar with 127 Hours, which is not.
The guy that cuts his arm off?
Yeah, that's 127. That's James Franco, I believe, right?
Man, watching that movie in the theaters almost fainted during that sequence.
Really? I wish I would have seen it in theaters now. Jeez, What is wrong with me? Anyway, back to the Turtles. I'm sorry. I forget what we were talking about.
Michael Bay's turtle movies.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on them?
Oh, well, I was all for it, because here's the thing. I don't know, like as a filmmaker who's been through film school, you realize that film students are super stuck up. And I say that as in like, just because they're film students, they think they need to just watch Wes Anderson and all these indie films. And I'm like, dude, If you enjoy Fast and the Furious, go freaking watch the Fast and the Furious. I went to theaters to see Hobbs and Shaw. And you know what? It wasn't a good movie. Don't get me wrong, but it was a fun movie. Like, you don't go to those movies expecting to get this great story. You go
The Rock's in that one?
The Rock and Jason Statham. And me and Josh went because I was like, dude, I kind of want to see Hobbs and Shaw. Like, I don't care for Fast and Furious, but I kind of want to see Hobbs and Shaw. And so he went with me because it was matinee. It was like $6. And so I just remember we laughed so hard because, Idris Elba's in that movie too. And he's kind of like this Superman. He even refers to himself as the Black Superman in that movie because he's very strong and you can't really take him down because he's taken this thing that's made him essentially almost invincible. And so in the movie, they're trying to fight him. And then and I don't know why this was so funny. You guys might not find this funny, but they had to regroup, The Rock and Jason Statham. And Jason Statham was like, we're going to have to work together to beat this guy. And me and Josh just started laughing so hard because we're like, of course he does. Like, why wouldn't they need to work together? Like, I don't know why, but it was so funny. But the movie itself, like I said, the story was okay, but the action in it, you go to those
movies. It was entertaining.
Yeah, you go to those movies for the action. And it's the same thing with the Turtles. Like, yeah, they didn't look like they were supposed to, but they looked good. They sounded good. They were funny. And I think probably the funniest part was when they're in the elevator and they start beatboxing together. You guys haven't seen the movie.
I haven't seen that movie because they don't look good. They look like freaks of nature.
Well, that's what they're supposed to be.
I'm still waiting for an adaptation from the comics where it's dark and there's blood with the turtles.
Well, there's a animated movie with the 2000, like the early 2000s versions of the cartoon.
I like that cartoon.
Yeah, the one where
it was the best animated version.
Yeah, and I never actually watched that cartoon, but that's the one that went like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, they had the white eyes.
Yeah, the white eyes. And so there was an animated movie where the turtles from the 80s, 90s cartoon end up helping them with something there. And then they end up going back in time to the comic versions of the Turtles. And it was in black and white and they had their red masks. It was actually a really cool movie. And I remember, I think I got it for free somewhere. And I just was like, you know what? I'm going to watch this. And I was like, man, I was pleasantly surprised with that movie.
I remember seeing that one. Yeah, it's been a while.
Don't disregard an animated movie just because it's animated. I just want to throw that out there.
I don't think anyone here is disregarding.
Well, maybe not anyone here in this podcast, but I'm just saying, if you're listening, go watch yourself some Disney animated movie, or not Disney, DC. Go watch
Disney animation.
Yeah,
they have some incredible films. We've probably watched Encanto at least 10 times in my household, and that's not because of the toddler. Like, it is a good film. Let me tell you this. If you're a millennial, you have emotional trauma and you will connect on a spiritual level to this movie.
Okay. Have to see it.
Okay, I did not mean to say Disney. Disney does have great animated movies, animated CGI and live action movies. DC movies. Go find Batman and Mr. Freeze and Sub-Zero. Under the Red Hood was a good movie. Batman Ninja was a good movie. The Batman meets the Batman versus Teenage Ninja Turtles. So there's like a plethora of great DC animated movies if you haven't seen. Sorry, back to the Turtles, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure we're going back to the Turtles. And the last one is the second one, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. I assume you guys haven't seen that one either because you won't open up your minds and watch a Michael Bay movie.
I don't think it was necessarily that. Just it didn't look good from the trailers.
The Turtles looked creepy.
Okay, whatever, dude. So the second movie is essentially an episode of the cartoon live action, and they're literally doing there's an episode where Krang tries to pull the Technodrome from Dimension X to Earth, and that's what they do in this movie. So let's talk about any other movies you guys could think of off the top of your head.
I think The Mask is a potential contender. I mean, it came from comic books as well.
Carrey?
Yeah, he sure did come from comic books. But have you read the comics versus the movie?
No, but it's kind of similar to TMNT, where it's a lot more violent, and they get away with a lot more than movie portrayed.
Yeah, TMNT was darker. I don't know about violent, but Mask was violent. And he does refer to himself. He says he can be a superhero. He says, I can be a superhero.
Oh, yes. I remember that.
I can fight crime.
That was one of my favorite movies growing up.
And then he goes and sticks those big pipes at those guys' butts for screwing them on his car.
Just imagine during that scene when he gathers those goons or those thugs, and he has those balloons and everything. He puts one
What
in
was
the
it?
shape of like a
Tommy gun.
Thompson machine gun. Like if it
You're the
was
only one that would
rated,
call it a Thompson machine gun. Go
yeah,
ahead.
if it was rated R, he would be able to shoot and kill a bunch of those guys right there.
Yeah, he would. Well, in that scene, he's pulling balloons out of his pocket and he pulls out a used condom. And when I was a kid, I did not understand that at all. And he's like, "Sorry, wrong pocket," and throws it away. But of course, as an adult, I thought that was hilarious because
I
it
think,
was.
and Jim Carrey in the comics is he typically kind of a funny Joker-esque type
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. He's insane. Look, the mask is now, if I remember correctly, Stanley Ipkiss really isn't, but the mask it brings out your innermost desires. So inside, Stanley Ipkiss is this. He describes it as a love crazy wild man. So that's what he is. That's the mask.
I think it'd be hard to get away with a sequel with Jim Carrey the way they did it back in the 90s just because of political correctness. But I would like to see Jim Carrey back as the mask and forget about that horrible sequel.
Well, technically, they did make a sequel.
Well, that's what he just said. That horrible sequel with Jamie Kennedy.
I didn't hear that.
Where he essentially sleeps with his wife as the mask, so his kid inherits those powers. I didn't really watch it. Now, the guy who plays Loki in the movie, he was in, if y'all have ever seen, Spy Kids. There's another superhero movie, right? I would think they were kind of superheroes.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't super, but they definitely had all the. I mean, if Batman's a superhero, the Spy Kids can be superhero. But anyway, this guy, he plays Floop.
Remember the Mighty Kids meals back in the day?
I've only seen Spy Kids 3D.
Oh, jeez, Jake.
That was the only one that I've seen.
I've only seen the first one. I think I saw the second one, but I don't remember. But I do remember the first one pretty well because the guy's name is Floop. His name's Alan Cumming, his real name. And he plays Loki in Son of the Mask. And so he plays Floop, and he has these like bodyguard things called thumb thumbs. And essentially it's just like thumbs running around. And they couldn't, like, their arms were thumbs, their legs were thumbs, their bodies was a thumb. And like, if I just remember them running and they would always slip because they're all thumbs, literally, which, the saying all thumbs is when you can't hold something and you keep dropping it. Anyway, shut up, guys. That was funny to me. Anyway, The Mask.
Yeah, great film.
Well, I've heard Jim Carrey say he said, "I will come back to do The Mask sequel if it's the same as everybody says when they talk about these sequels that happen 20 years after the fact. Yeah. I'll do it if the script was right. It's like, okay, well, someone write the right script. I'll write the right script.
I mean, what do you think the right script would be? Do you think bringing back Cameron Diaz's character?
Yeah, you'd have to bring back the main
reprise
characters.
her. Yeah.
Of course, Jim Carrey. I don't know if we need the actor that played Dorian. I'm pretty sure he got arrested. I don't remember. I don't think we'd need him. We can maybe have a better villain. Peter Riegert, who plays the lieutenant. That would be funny to bring him and his.
What's the name of the city where that movie took place? I know it was like a fictional
Edge City.
Edge City. Kind of sounds like a city you'd hear in like the DC universe or something.
Type city.
Comic book city,
yeah.
I guess.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. I could talk The Mask all day long. I remember when that movie came out. I didn't get to see it in theaters, but I got the movie from my mom for Christmas. It's an early Christmas present. And,
the Son of the Mask was a straight up family movie. I mean,
because The Mask, the 90s did a really good job at like setting like cities in the 90s, like New York, Edge City. We're just always so dark. There's always steam coming from the sewers. It's like it's perpetual rain there, just raining all the time. It's crazy how much it rains, how much steam comes from the sewers. But I thought even for the 90s, The Mask had really good CGI as well.
Yeah, I understand that the mask, it was more of a prosthetic than anything, wasn't it? The makeup and all that. The teeth were fake, the dentures. They
weren't going to have Jim Carrey talk in those teeth, but he learned how to talk in them, so they left them on him. Jim Carrey's Jim Carrey, so he learned how to freaking talk in them like the pro he is. So he was able to use them to the whole movie, and which is great because they look great on him. Those fake teeth. So we talked about some non-Marvel movies before the MCU and DCEU, which I don't know if they still call it the DCEU now. That was kind of back when they were trying to do the same thing Marvel was doing. So
Look how that worked out.
Yeah, I don't. They tried to rush. The issue with the DCEU is I think it could have been a lot better. They just tried to rush everything to try to catch up with Marvel and the Avengers and Justice League and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you guys could have taken your time. And I know we're not supposed to be talking about this right now, but I'm gonna say it anyway. When Shazam came out, it was kind of when they hit their stride.
Yep.
It's kind of when they found their footing, I guess, is what I should say. Because what has come out since Shazam, DC wise? Has anything come out? I mean, I know something's come out, right?
84.
Yeah, Wonder Woman 84.
Okay, that
Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League.
I don't even want to talk about Wonder Woman 84. Like, I did not.
I couldn't finish. That movie.
And you told us that last time.
Such a massive tonal change from the first one. It makes zero sense to me. I know they're trying to go for that 80s era vibe of movie making, or I don't know, but it just was very jarring to me.
I'm just not
a big factor of that is the director writer actually came out from Wonder Woman 84, and they had a lot of their creative freedom taken away off of the first one, because the original Wonder Woman, the writers were female, the director was female, they had a lot of female production crew, and that changed in Wonder Woman 84. The studio really got involved, according to the director, and basically said, you're going to make the movie we want you to make. These are the choices we want to be in the movie. And they took a lot away for freedom to make the film. And I think that's what caused such large tonal change.
That's usually how it works is they get these directors, when Ant-Man was announced, who they got for that was Edgar Wright. And I thought that'd have been awesome. But, they creative differences. Studio got involved too much and Edgar Wright's like, I'm out. Edgar Wright was already an established director by this point. So he was like able to kind of do that. But if it were me and I had only done, maybe 2 or 3 movies and they were like, hey, we want you to direct this movie. But okay, I'll do whatever you want. Tell me what you want and I'll do it. And then after a while, build that relationship and start making my own stuff and then kind of get to that point where I can have creative freedom for other things. So I don't know if y'all seen the anime Death Note. It's an anime, Japanese anime, but it's about this kid who finds a notebook on the ground and he's able to kill anybody by writing their name in the notebook.
Does he play the demon?
He plays Ryuk. In the American version.
Of course he does.
Yeah, so they made an American version. Netflix did an American version of it, and they announced that Willem Dafoe was going to play Ryuk, and I was like, that is perfect casting for him. Because Ryuk, he has these gigantic spikes on his back. He's completely black. He's essentially, he just looks evil. He's very, very tall, very, very lanky. Are you looking at pictures?
He kind of looks like William Dafoe.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe. Well, that's on How I Met Your Mother.
I'm familiar with the character. Yeah, it's kind of big. He's pale. He's got eyes.
Yeah, and he's got these huge points on his back.
Are we talking about the live action, or are we talking about? Okay, so we are talking about the live action series.
The
where they Americanized it.
No, well, it's an American movie.
Yeah, but they have like a white guy, like it's a white teenager.
Was it American?
I mean, okay.
Okay.
Westernized it.
Okay. Real quick. Let me just talk about this whole issue with whitewashing. Okay. If I were to go to Japan and say, I want to make a live action version of this movie in Japan, I'm not going to put a bunch of Americans in it because I'm in Japan. Let's assume I'm Japanese. So, you have the Death Note movies, live action Death Note movies over there, and everybody's Japanese. And then, let's look at Dragon Ball Z, Ghost in the Shell, even Death Note, where they take these Japanese animes and make, let me say this clearly, Japanese animes and make American versions. And then people get mad because they put Americans in them. You see the dilemma I'm having here?
Yeah.
And then people get mad because there's a bunch of white people. And I'm like, well, I mean, in Death Note, there were still, so Death Note had the main character was white. The kid who played L was black, which I thought was a great choice because he was really good for that role. And then you got Willem Dafoe, who voices Ryu, who's also white. And I don't know, it just bugs me when people get mad. Like Ghost in the Shell, Scarlett Johansson plays the main character. She's this white girl. And I'm like, but it's an American version.
But everyone in Ghost in the Shell, though, everyone else besides her is Asian.
No, the bad guy is white.
90% of the people in that movie are Asian.
Okay, who cares? It's still an American version.
And it's still clearly like over in Asia. That's the only problem I have with Ghost in the Shell. I get what you're saying about Death Note. I get what you're saying. They moved it over to America, so it makes sense that there is an American teenager. I will give you that.
So if I'm going to make an American version of something, I'm going to put an American in it. Now that I might put, I'm like, okay, let's talk about Mortal Kombat. Okay. Mortal Kombat video game movie. And we'll have an episode on this later. Mortal Kombat, but an Asian guy plays Raiden. Okay. But in the games, he's not Asian. He's white, but I don't have a problem with it. It just bugs me when people get mad that Americans are in American versions of things.
I get you.
Okay. Sorry, I had to go on as they say on Office Ladies. Their soapbox. I had to get
just like with the recent controversy with the actress that's playing Snow White in the live action film. She's like Polish and somewhere from South America or Mexico. So she's mixed. The Snow White's described as having skin as white as snow. See people giving her a lot of grief because she doesn't fit that description. But it's
I guess I've heard a little bit about this.
But I think the actress has responded in some way, but trying to be delicate about it.
Well, I think there's more problems with that movie in this.
Yeah.
Besides just a Latino for a white character.
Yeah, I've heard
a whole other subset they need to worry about.
Yeah, I do remember Peter Dinklage mentioning that Snow White's trying to be different by hiring a non-white actor, but then they still have little people playing the dwarfs, and he's like, it's still backwards.
Interesting.
Like, well, yeah, I don't know how to even
I
don't know. I don't know how to approach that. I don't want to try to approach that whole issue because I didn't really even realize they were making a new Snow White.
Well, they're making live action of everything. Remember Beauty and the Beast? What else have they done?
Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King,
live action, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella,
Aladdin,
Lion King. They did Lady and the Tramp, which was Disney Plus exclusive, I think. They also did Pete's Dragon. Nobody talks about that. They did a live action version.
I'm not surprised that no one talks about it.
It was okay. I mean, it was fine.
Real quick, with the time we have left, what would you say your favorite pre-Marvel, pre-DC, or other superhero movie is?
Go ahead, Zach.
Between probably the Batman 89 and Spider-Man 2002.
If we're talking even non-Marvel Studios movies, if The Mask is if that's considered a superhero movie, which I don't necessarily consider it one, but let's say people besides me think it is, then I would go with The Mask. But Kick-Ass would probably be my top.
Yes. I think I'm probably going to have to say the Sam Raimi Maguire trilogy.
Now if we're going with Marvel Studios stuff, yeah, absolutely.
Like pre-MCU / other.
Yeah. Totally. If
you're on an island and you only have one, you have to choose. I mean, I'd do it. The
Sam Raimi trilogy all the way. Absolutely. Desert Island. You can take one, non-MCU movie with you. Well, let's say 3, taking the Sam Raimi trilogy. Yeah.
Spider-Man 2.1 as well.
Yeah, that's the extended version. I have that version. All right. Well, I guess that's it. So if you are listening, we do have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You can Fantastic Mr. Podcast. Check us out. Tweet at us, comment at us, or whatever the kids are saying these days. If you do have any ideas for episodes, please let us know. We would love to hear your ideas or any comments you have about anything, period. So thanks for listening, and I guess that'll do it for us today. See you guys.